Seated. Good morning and welcome home. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Adam and I'm the discipleship pastor here at PittNaz. Kyle, our lead pastor, is on vacation today, and so pray for him and his family. But I want to give you some good news today. I want to give you something really big to celebrate. It's not as big as God's love that Age was talking about. Nothing is as big as celebrating that. But this is still a big celebration. I am very happy to announce to you that we have raised 100% of everything we need to send our kids to camp. So, first and foremost, thank you to God, who is our provider and gives us the ability to contribute to things like that. And then thank you, second of all, to all of you who gave. Thank you for your generosity and your sacrifice. I can't think of very many investments that are bigger than that. Maybe no investments that are bigger than that, of being able to send our kids to camp. So thank you for your generosity in that. But last week, we started a new series called Say What? When Following God is Hard to Understand. And the foundation for this series is in Isaiah 55, verse 9, where it says, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." That's God speaking to us there. God is infinite, and we are not. And so it should make sense to us, as we said last week, it should make sense to us that sometimes he's hard to understand, and sometimes his ways are hard to understand, and sometimes what he asks us to do is hard to understand. But we trust his heart. We trust his wisdom. We trust his power. And we trust that he has a vantage point that we don't have. We trust that God has a vantage point that we don't have. That's why his ways are higher than our ways. He has a vantage point that we don't have. And so because of that, when following God is hard to understand, we trust him, right? We trust him. When we don't understand what he's doing, when we don't understand what he's leading us to do or where he's leading us, we trust him because he has a vantage point that we don't have. Well, this morning, we're going to take a little bit different approach to the subject. Sometimes God leads us through tests that are hard to understand. That's what we talked about last week. And sometimes he leads us through those difficult times, but sometimes it's just hard to understand what he says in his word, isn't it? I mean, sometimes you come across places in the Bible that leave you going, "Say what? What is that all about? What are you saying, God?" But then other times he says things in his word that are just countercultural. In other words, sometimes he says things that go against what our culture tells us is right or normal. And so sometimes in that way, God can leave us going, "Say what?" Because we get conditioned to hearing what the culture around us says. And so the verse that we're going to look at today, it sort of fits both of those things. It's a verse that kind of, when you first read it, kind of leaves you going, "Say what? What is God talking about there?" But then even as we dig into the meaning of it and we dig into what it's talking about, we're going to find it's very countercultural. It tells us some truths that go against what our culture tells us is right and true and normal. But before we get to that verse, I want to share some pictures with you. There was a woman several years ago who sent a picture of herself to 25 photo editors in 25 different countries. And she said, "Will you edit this photo? Will you touch up this photo and make me beautiful?" And then they sent those pictures back to her. And I have just a few examples of what came back to her. The one on the left is the picture, just a normal picture of her that she sent out. And someone from the United States sent back to her the picture on the right. Quite a bit different, right? This one was from Bangladesh. Philippines, that one's a lot different, isn't it? Pakistan, darkened her skin up a little bit, touched up a few other things. Those are just a few of the examples, but as we can see from those examples, the definition of beauty changes from culture to culture, doesn't it? And it even changes within a culture over time, and there's even disagreement within cultures. Some of you may have looked at the one from the United States and said, "No, I don't think so," right? So beauty is not, it's a cultural thing. And if we're only going to use earthly standards to determine what true beauty is, then we're never going to have a standard for true beauty, are we? Because it's all relative. And it all depends on the culture and the time and personal preference. But if we start with the truth that God is the author and the creator of beauty, then we can look to what he says about what true beauty is about, can't we? We can look to what he says. And so with that in mind, here's our say what verse for today. Read it with me. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. Say it together. Say what? What? What does that mean? What is that talking about? Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. Now that puts kind of a funny image in your head, doesn't it? Let me help you with that image. Yeah. You see bacon, don't you, Age? You see bacon. That is one ugly pig, isn't it? That is, I mean, some pigs might look kind of cute. Almost said most kids. That's a slip, isn't it? Some pigs, they're kind of cute and cuddly, but that is not one of them. That is one ugly pig, and it is not helped one bit by those rings in its nose. You see, you can't take an ugly pig and make it beautiful just by putting a ring in its nose. And that takes on even more meaning when we realize that, this was written in the Jewish culture, this verse was. And in Jewish culture, pigs were unclean animals. They were considered unclean. You couldn't raise them. You couldn't eat them. Sorry, Age, no bacon. You couldn't eat them. You couldn't raise them. You couldn't touch them. You couldn't do anything with them. They were unclean animals. And so that really emphasizes the point that you can't take an ugly, unclean pig and make it beautiful and make it clean just by putting a ring in its nose. But this proverb isn't really about pigs, is it? The real lesson is this. And young girls, you especially, I want you to hear this. I want you to look closely at what's on the screen. True beauty is not about what's on the outside. It is about the heart. True beauty is not about the outside. It is about the heart. Now, I'm mostly talking to the ladies right now, but guys, don't check out, okay? Don't check out for two reasons. First of all, how you define beauty, guys, how you define beauty has a direct impact on how you treat and value the women in your life. So, guys, this message is for you too, even this part of the message. And then second reason I don't want you to check out is because I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to us guys specifically here in just a minute as well. But right now, mainly talking to the ladies, but all of us need to pay attention. You see, the world tells us, our culture tells us, that beauty is about height, and it's about weight, and it's about your clothes, and it's about your hair. God says real beauty is measured by your morals. It's measured by your values. It's measured by your integrity. That's what you do when nobody's looking. True beauty, God says, is measured by what's here. It's measured by what's here. God says real beauty springs from the choices you make, and the choices you make come from here. In fact, we find this verse in the Old Testament in 1 Samuel. It says, the Lord doesn't look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at what? The heart. The heart. The Lord looks at the heart. And so another way of looking at this proverb is kind of bad news, good news, okay? The bad news from this proverb is if a woman has no morals, no ethics, treats people like garbage, has no regard for the God who created her and loves her, then you cannot make her more beautiful with makeup and clothes and a good hairstylist. That's the bad news. The good news is, if a woman has no morals or ethics, treats people like garbage, and has no regard for the God who created her, she can be made more beautiful by the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. That love that we just sang about and the age just talked about. That's how she can be made more beautiful. It's through repentance, through turning from sin, finding the forgiveness and the grace of Jesus Christ. Even the most spiritually ugly person can be made beautiful. Because true beauty is found in Jesus. It's found in his love for you and in your love for him. It's found in repenting and turning away from the things that keep you away from him. It's found in surrendering your life to him so that he can transform you into the person of beauty that he created you to be. That is where beauty comes from. It comes from offering your entire life as one giant act of worship to the holy and faithful God who created you, loves you, died for you, and calls you by name. That is where beauty comes from. None of this other stuff outside matters. It comes from there. So ladies, find your beauty. Find your worth as a woman. Find your value as a woman in Jesus Christ and in the truth that you are created and deeply loved by an amazing God. Find your beauty there. Find your worth and value there. Your appearance does not define you. Your weight does not define you. What you look like does not define you. And while we're on the subject, what someone has done to you or what someone has said to you, those things do not define you. Your identity and your value and your worth come from Jesus Christ. From his love for you right here and your love for him right here. David says this in Psalm 50. He says, from Zion, that's Jerusalem, perfect in beauty, God shines forth. Perfect in beauty. God is perfect in beauty. True beauty comes from him because he is perfect in beauty. And so if there's going to be any beauty in our lives, we have to be connected to him. We have to be connected to him. We can try everything in the world to pretty our lives up, but we will never capture the essence of beauty in our lives until we are sold out and surrendered to the one who is perfect in beauty. So, if I had to pick one verse from the Bible that captures the essence of true womanhood, it would be this. And by the way, men and women, both, if you want to read an extended passage, what I think is the greatest passage in all the Bible about what godly womanhood looks like, read the second half of Proverbs 31. Here's one verse from Proverbs 31. Charm is deceptive, beauty disappears, but a woman who honors the Lord should be praised. Anything you do to beautify the outside is one day going to disappear. What does not disappear is honoring the Lord, receiving the love that he has for you and returning that love to him. A woman who honors the Lord is to be praised. Ladies, spend at least as much time. In fact, spend twice as much time seeking to honor the Lord as you do doing anything on the outside. Honor him with what's in here. Honor him with what's in here. Live your life honoring the Lord and you'll find true beauty. Well, like I said, this message isn't just for women, it's for men too. And it's for men in a couple of ways. And by the way, ladies, don't you check out here either, because there's some things sprinkled in here for you also. But how is this verse or how is this message for the men as well? Well, it's for the men in two different ways. First of all, men, stop defining women by their outward beauty. Stop assigning value to women based on outward beauty. Now, that doesn't mean you can't appreciate a woman's outward beauty. God kind of wired us that way. But be careful with that, because there's a line you can cross, isn't there? There's a line that you can cross that goes from simply appreciating beauty to lusting in your heart. Say, well, how do you know the difference? How do you know when you've crossed that line? Well, I heard a preacher once say that if you're driving down the street and you see a woman on the sidewalk and you think to yourself, that's a beautiful woman, and you keep driving and you never think anything about it, that's one thing. But he said if you circle the block to get a second look, you've probably crossed the line. You've probably crossed a line. Here's a more serious way to think about that line, though. If you look at someone, ladies, this is for you too. Lusting doesn't just go from the man to the woman. Women can lust after men as well. When you look at someone, whether it's a real life person or whether it's in print or whether it's on a screen when nobody else in the house is awake, when you look at someone and you think in your mind what you could do or would do if you had the chance, Jesus says once you've crossed that line in your mind, you've already committed the sin of adultery in your heart. Talk about say what? Say what? Our culture says if you don't actually do the act, then you're not really hurting anybody, so what's the big deal? That's what our culture says, right? Again, remember, there's some of this that's countercultural. But remember, God's ways are higher than our ways. And that includes his standards. And if I cross that line in my mind, I don't have to actually commit the act. If I commit the act in my mind, then Jesus says, I've already sinned. I've already committed adultery in my heart. Guys, be careful of that line. I remember when I was a youth pastor, sometimes teen boys would ask me, how far is too far? And I would always say, you're asking the wrong question. You're asking, how close can I get to the line without sinning? The question is, how far away from the line do I need to stay to make sure I don't cross it? That's not just true for teen boys, hormone rage teen boys. That's true for all of us. It's true for all of us up here. What do you need to do to stay as far away from that line as you can stay? Men, treat your wife, treat your girlfriend, treat any other woman in your life, treat any woman you see like a daughter of a king. Because if she loves Jesus, that's exactly what she is. She is a daughter of the King. Treat her that way. Not just in your actions, but also in your words and also in your thoughts. Treat her as a daughter of the King. And by the way, guys, if you're single, whether you're 15 or 85 or anywhere in between, if you're looking for a woman to date, don't look first and foremost at outward beauty. You know what your first priority should be? I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. When you're thinking about who you're going to date or who you want to marry, there's one question at the top of your list. It's not what does she look like, what does he look like. The number one question at the top of the list, does she love Jesus? Does he love Jesus? From the day my 3 sons get married, that will always be the first question out of my mouth when they tell me, Dad, I've got a girlfriend. Does she love Jesus? Filter everything through that. Men and women both. Filter everything through that lens when you're deciding who you want to date or who you want to marry, because it's not about outward beauty. It's about the heart. That's where true and lasting beauty comes from. Second way that this verse and this message is for men is this. Just like our culture feeds us a lot of garbage about what it means to be a beautiful woman, our culture also feeds us a lot of garbage about what it means to be a real man, doesn't it? Being a real man is not how much muscle you have. It's not about how deep your voice is. If it was, I'd be in trouble because I can't even fake it. It's not about how big a truck you drive. I remember one time when Austin, our oldest, he was maybe 3 years old, and I was driving this little Saturn Matchbox car. I mean, it was a little car. I bought it in college because it was really cheap. But I was still driving it I drove it for over 20 years, in fact. And so I drove this little Saturn, and Sarah at the time, she was driving the big 3-seat Trailblazer SUV that we still have. That's what she drove, and I drove this little Saturn. And so one day, Austin and I, he was maybe 3 years old. We were in the Walmart parking lot, and we passed this really big pickup. I mean, it had big old wheels, and it was jacked up. It was this big old honking truck. And from the back seat, Austin goes, "Daddy, that's a big truck." I said, "Yeah, buddy, that is a big truck." "You don't have a big truck." "You're right, buddy, I don't have a big truck." "Mama has a big truck." "You're right, I don't have a big truck, Mama has a big truck, and you're grounded for the rest of your life." To wait till I was 40 years old to get a truck. But that's okay, because manhood isn't really based on that. It's not about how good you are at hunting or fishing or even fixing things. And can we just say, it has nothing to do with how many women you've been with. You talk about a lie straight from hell. Being a real man has nothing to do with any of that external stuff. It has nothing to do with any of that. Just like a gold ring isn't going to make a pig any prettier, neither will any of those external things make you more of a man. True manhood, just like true beauty, true manhood is about morals, and it's about ethics, and it's about integrity, what you do when nobody's looking, when everybody else in the house is asleep, or when nobody's looking at work. It's about how you treat people. And ultimately, it's about how you love God and how you serve God. You see, ultimately, it's about Jesus. Men, we had a statement like this for ladies. Men, here's our statement. Your manhood, your worth as a man, your value as a man, they are all found in Jesus Christ. Not in any of that external stuff. You want to talk about being a real man, it has to start there. It has to start with your connection with Jesus Christ. That's what defines who you are as a man. And so if I had to pick out one verse for the men that captures the essence of true manhood, it would be this. I love this verse. I had this on the mirror in my boys' bathroom for many years when they were younger. I love this verse. Men, be on your guard. Stand firm in what? The faith. That's the connection to Jesus. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous, be strong, and do everything in love. Not selfishness. Do everything in love. Be strong, be courageous, be firm in the faith, be on your guard, all of which springs from your connection with Jesus Christ. It starts and really it ends with that. That is where true beauty comes from, and that is where true manhood comes from. So don't fall for the lie. that true beauty or true manhood come from those external things. Don't fall for that lie. Ladies, if you have received God's gift of salvation and you are being transformed by the power of His grace, then you are a beautiful woman. If you have received God's gift of salvation and you are being transformed by the power of His love and grace, you are a beautiful woman, no matter what is on the outside. That's where your beauty comes from. Men, if you have received God's gift of salvation and you are being transformed by the power of His grace in your life, you are a real man. If you have received God's gift of salvation and you are being transformed by the power of His grace, you are a real man. All the stuff out here doesn't matter. Because beauty is measured through your relationship with Jesus. And manliness is measured through your relationship with Jesus. So ladies, stop measuring yourself by external beauty. Stop measuring yourself by that. And stop placing value on men based on what our culture tells us makes a real man. Is that fair? Stop placing value on yourself based on external things. And stop placing value on men based on what our culture says. And men, stop measuring yourself by the things that our culture says makes a real man. And stop placing value on women based on external beauty. So, this is another one of those sermons that doesn't really have, I don't have any short, simple action steps for you. And we've talked about this before. Sometimes we just need to hear a truth, learn a truth, be reminded of a truth, become aware of a truth. And then we just need to say, okay, God, what do I need to do with this? So rather than some short, easy action step, this is the only action step I have for you this morning. Ask God, pray to God. God, how do these truths need to change the way I view myself? And how do these truths need to impact the way that I treat others? If neither beauty nor manliness is about external things, it's about what's in the heart, it's about your connection to Jesus, then how do those truths need to change the way I view myself? And how do those truths need to impact the way that I treat others? If you'd like to come pray about that as we close, I would invite you to. In fact, would you stand with us as we worship in song some more? Maybe you're feeling convicted about something today, and you want to come to the altar and pray and just repent and say, God, I've been crossing a line in my mind, or God, I've been judging others. I've been looking down my nose at others based on false external things. Or God, I haven't really been valuing your love in my life and who you say that I am. Come pray about it. Come pray with me. I'll be right here on the front row. Age is right here. Or maybe you just want to come forward and just pray and kneel and praise and honor and worship to God and say, God, thank you for loving me the way that I am. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for transforming me from the inside out. However you need to respond to this, do so. Ladies, look into the eyes of Jesus. Fall into his embrace. And you will find your true beauty. Men, follow Jesus into battle. Join his army. And you will find your true manhood. Let's sing.